Hi, my name is Matt Simmons. I'm an associate professor at the University of Minnesota Crookston, and I'm excited to be able to share a bit about the module that I put together as part of the Climate Hub partnership. The module is titled Managing Tallgrass Prairie with Pyrrhic Herbivory, and the class is called Prairie and Range Ecology and Management. This is a junior and senior level class within the Natural Resources program. It's a fairly standard type of intro to range class with a focus more on prairies, just given our location in upper and western Minnesota. And so topics are pretty standard range topics, as I mentioned, where we talk about range inventory and monitoring and stocking rates and range capacity, improving livestock distribution. And then we get down to grazing systems, where we talk about different grazing systems like rotational and deferred, and that includes pyrrhic herbivory and patch burn grazing. And so this module fit really well within that topic. So as an overview, this case study is based on research that I conducted on patch burn grazing. And there was a patch burn grazing study that was conducted from 2011 to 2014 at Glacial Ridge National Wildlife Refuge, which is about 20 miles from our campus here. And so I used the data that I collected there to create this case study or this modules for students to learn more about pyrrhic herbivory. And so for the case study, they just as an overview, they were to evaluate the outcomes of pyrrhic herbivory as a prairie management tool by analyzing data that I collected in the field, as well as remote sensing data from the rangeland analysis platform. And then they're to interpret how these outcomes influence plant structure and production and bird nesting habitat suitability. So some specific learning objectives included interpreting trends in plant production using rangeland analysis platform, the Production Explorer tool. And then they were to analyze data that I collected, or at least a subset of data that I collected in the field, and to assess the structural heterogeneity in the patch burn graze unit versus what I called a control unit, or that's a burn only prairie unit, where we didn't graze in that unit, we only did some traditional burn only practices. And then the students were to evaluate the effectiveness of the pyrrhic herbivory as a management tool for promoting plant heterogeneity. And then the application came in looking at bird nesting habitat requirements and comparing the two management approaches, the patch burn grazing with the burn only unit. So getting into a little bit more detail. So I formed groups of students, and the groups then were to analyze data from the rangeline analysis platform, and they looked at differences in plant production and stocking rates between the patch burn graze unit and the control unit or the burn only unit for the 4 years during the patch burn grazing study, which was 2011 to 2014, and the 4 years following from 2015 to 2018. I also asked them to look at any other time span that they felt would be appropriate or applicable and explain why they picked those years. And then they were to analyze the data that I collected at the Glacial Ridge National Wildlife Refuge as part of this patch burn grazing study. And so I gave them a subset of data that included visual obstruction readings, litter depth, and ground cover. So they were to compare the results between those two units, the patch burn grazed unit and the control unit, to determine how they would influence plant structural heterogeneity, and then also look at the nesting habitat characteristics of several tallgrass prairie species and determine which of these management approaches would likely support which species and which management approach would likely support higher bird species richness. So next several slides just gives you an overview of this case study. So we had about a 2,000 acre patch burn graze unit, and then another about 2,000 acre control site where we instigated burns but no grazing. And so I introduced students to the rangeland analysis platform, Production Explorer. I created shape files for both the patch burn graze site and the control site. And this is just a illustration summarizing some of the production estimates for different time spans. Okay, I also provided them some nesting habitat requirements for 15 common upland grassland bird species. And this is just a subset of a table that I provided for them that showed the visual obstruction readings, litter depth, and key habitat requirements and management approaches for those different species. Okay, as far as assessments, I was looking at their interpretation of the data. So both of their interpretation of the RAP production and stocking rate data, as well as their analysis and assessments of the field-based data that I provided to them from those units. And then in the end, they were to write a report to compare the two units and then recommend a management approach based on these bird nesting habitat outcomes. So I took a total of 2 days in class to present this module. The first day, I introduced the case study to the class, and then the rest of the class period was really focused on the rangeland analysis platform. I wanted them to be very familiar with it so that they could use it on their own. We went through the main parts of the tool together in class, and then I gave them an assignment for them to complete to start during class period and to complete outside of class that kind of went through step by step what the rangeland analysis platform did and had them analyze data. I created another shapefile actually for them at a different site to use in this assignment to determine stocking rate and production data. And then for the second day in class, then we went back, reviewed the rangeland analysis platform again, and then I gave them the rest of the data in an Excel spreadsheet, which was a subset of the data that I had collected in the field. And then I talked through the type of data that they were going to analyze and some main analyses that they could perform on that data. We formed groups of 3 students per group, and they had some time at the end of class to begin working together and to start organizing their approach to their project. The rest of the time, then, they completed the report outside of class. So what I wish I had, so they completed the report, and overall the reports were excellent. There was one group that was spot on. The report included pretty much everything that I was looking for. The other groups did a good job. Didn't go into as much detail as I was looking for, but still did a good job. What I wish I would have done was to have a follow-up debriefing discussion during class after they had completed their report. And so I had them turn in the report. I graded the report. This was at the end of the semester. Uh, and so, but I didn't go back and have a debriefing time during class, which would have really been helpful. I really would have wanted to ask them what stood out to them about the project and about the two units. I think we could have gotten into a little bit more detail than just what they submitted in their report. I would want to know, what did they learn through the project? What were some of the challenges? Were there any surprises? Or, and also what kind of improvements could I do in the future to make this more accessible to the students? So just having that final debriefing time would have been really important. So uh, I'm providing all uh, the materials that I used in this project for any other educator to use. It's the slide deck that I used to introduce the students to the project, the data sets, the field data that they use to analyze the differences between the two units, the excuse me, the shape files for the rangeland analysis platform, the table of the bird nesting habitat requirements, the initial assignment introducing the students to the rangeland analysis platform, the instruction sheet for the students to complete the project, and then the rubric that I used to grade the final report.